Hi, hello. Welcome to another episode of Isaiah's Newsstand. It's your host, Isaiah Edwards. The date is July the 3rd, 2024. Hopefully this episode finds you well, in good spirits and high hopes. As for me, I'm doing pretty good. Today went well. I'd say real well. Work was pretty slow. Had some time to even hop on the game and hang out outside, get some air, cut up with maintenance. It was overall good. Let's see here. Food corner. What did we eat for food? I actually ran back Mexican food again. I made a chicken and bacon rice bowl this time because I still had those chicken thighs left. So I was like, let me just go ahead and clear those out. So that turned out really well. It was really yummy. I instead of deep frying the taco shells, I just put two of them in like the deep fryer, and then the other ones I just put on the skillet. Overall, pretty good. I will say, though, whenever I air fry the tortillas, it's not nearly as fulfilling or satisfying as when you deep fry them for obvious fatty reasons. But yeah, still a good meal. Still enjoyed it. Let's see here. Some other things. I'm going to be off, obviously, for the holidays. Well, I shouldn't say obviously. I've definitely worked jobs in America where, we have the 4th of July, independence and freedom, but not for you if you're working retail. You gotta be out making that money. But luckily that's not me today, or tomorrow. Or the next day, because I called off for that too. I requested off. So I'm very happy to have a 4-day weekend ahead of me. So yay, America, for whatever that's worth. Anyway, I'm excited. It's definitely going to be some burgers. It's definitely going to be some glizzies in my future. I'll keep you posted. All right, enough about me. Let me go ahead and do my startup and we'll get into some news. Ooh-wee. All right. Our first story comes from the Miami Herald. The situation is grim. Hurricane Beryl shreds Caribbean islands, kills at least 4. On the islands of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, ground zero for Hurricane Beryl's 150 miles per hour eye, the toll is catastrophic. An estimated 95% of the homes are heavily damaged and likely uninhabitable. A day after the monster hurricane ripped through the southern Caribbean, residents and governments started to come to grips with the staggering losses to property and businesses and a growing death toll. I believe that the total now is at 4, at least 4. I think I've heard it go as high as at least 6. Obviously, that's very sad. I also found out this week that hurricane names are alphabetical. I knew that, and that's how. Because I'm curious, how do we get the name Beryl? What is that? And apparently, that's not the first time that they've used the name Beryl before. But they keep a name of a hurricane in play until it does X amount of damage. I don't have the number at hand, or it kills someone. So it looks like this might be Beryl's last run, or maybe at least for a while. I don't know how long it's discontinued. Maybe it's for forever. I don't know. But yeah, a little fun fact I'm trying to drop there. But yeah, very unfortunate. I know it's supposed to be in Jamaica now, or has passed through Jamaica as of recording this, because it's supposed to hit sometime in Wednesday. It's Wednesday now. Wednesday evening. But yeah, speaking of bad weather, not that this really equates, but we definitely are getting some for the rest of this week. I know literally storm just passed through here in good old Cincinnati. Hopefully, the weather holds for the holiday festivities and whatnot. But my condolences obviously go to the families impacted by this hurricane. Obviously losing life, losing your home, that shit's fucked up. It's sad. It's sad as hell, and it's really hard to literally pick up the pieces. So my thoughts and, condolences go out to everyone affected in that. And I know that this hurricane is not done. So if you are in the trajectory of that kind of stuff, take it seriously. I know sometimes people write it off or whatever, but do what you can. And I know that, when we have a conversation of like evacuations and like hurricanes, a lot of times people scoff, like, well, why didn't people leave? Why are people just hanging out? Like, they're not taking it seriously. It's like, what if you just don't have the literal finances to just uproot your life for a week or more? A lot of people don't have that luxury. They're just where they're at. And in more ways than not, they're stuck where they're at, It's definitely something to think about and consider before you, like, turn up your nose to people just being like, oh, they're being foolish, they're being dumb. Like, but definitely, do what you can. Take the precautions you can. Anyway, let me not get too preachy. Let's move on to the next thing. This one was just an odd little story I picked up listening to the BBC. And sometimes I have this issue where I'll hear a story on a podcast, a news thing, and be like, damn, that's such a good story. Let me go find that so I can talk about it. And I literally cannot find it. Like, it just becomes like a whole detective story. I got to turn into fucking Dick Tracy to goddamn get the lick, get the beat. So I wound up finding the story after the BBC from Sixth Tone. I don't really know if they're that credible or great, but overall, like, this corroborates with what I heard on the BBC. So I was like, all right, bet, let's run it. Just saying in terms of, like, if this is like a New York Post situation, then, like, hey, sorry about it, but I'll get my news from wherever I can. China confronts an insidious new privacy risk: lifelike silicone masks. All right. In China, concerns are rising about the risks posed by an unusual technology: hyper-realistic silicone masks that can be used to impersonate another person and even hack into facial recognition systems. The masks have been widely used in Hollywood bank heist movies for years, but they are becoming increasingly available to the general public via Chinese e-commerce platforms. A trend that experts worry could lead to a crime spree unless the trade is controlled. Despite Chinese authorities' efforts to raise awareness, the risks posed by silicone masks, the products can still easily be purchased online, with vendors promising they can fool facial recognition scanners. Let's see here. The price that they found, kind of just looking it up, for like one of these high-end masks, would be 25,000 yuan or $3,400, which, I mean, honestly, if these are enough to, like, pull off a fucking caper, that's a really great-ass fucking deal. Not that we're advocating crime on this podcast or anything like that. These aren't tips. These aren't tricks. Don't do this shit. But anyway, let's read a little bit into, like, the story that really made me want to talk about this. A burglar entered a residential compound in Shanghai and broke into 4 first-floor apartments, making off with 100,000 yuan in valuables. When police inspected the surveillance footage, they found that the burglar appeared to be an elderly man wearing a black coat and knitted hat. Officers were able to track down the suspect using clues left at one of the crime scenes, but when they detained the man, they were intrigued to find that he was in his 40s and looked nothing like the figure in the surveillance footage. The culprit, surnamed Tong, later confessed that he had worn a silicone mask as a disguise. So it's a very clever lick. When I was looking this up, I saw that there was even 3D printed masks that a guy was wearing, and those look pretty realistic. So, I mean, it's pretty... It really did feel like it was something out of a Mission Impossible James Bond movie. No way. No way this actually is something that works on people. But, you see it in action, and you're like, damn, don't get me wrong, if you got up close to this guy, you'd know something's wrong here. Something's off. But, definitely through the lens of a camera or in quick passing, I could, especially with the mask on, something like that to kind of add to the effect, I could see how this passes for a normal dude. And you're just like, oh yeah, maybe that's just somebody's grandpa or something. When really it's a bad grandpa situation, So, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, it seems, Sixth Tone found that a simple search using the phrase silicone face mask on the e-commerce platform Taobao yielded hundreds of results. So it seems like these are pretty easy to find. Though I will add that maybe the guarantee that they can fool facial recognition might be a bit of a stretch. No pun intended there. But no, fuck it. I said this before. All my puns are intended. But yeah, I just found this interesting. I thought it was a cool add-on to what capers have been happening in life and in history. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe there'll be more people doing this style of heist where they literally put on not like Richard Nixon masks or anything like that, or Obama masks. They're like literally putting on just random old guy masks and trying to blend in at a cafe near you. Wouldn't that be wild? Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about some other shit. Let's get to nature and science. From NPR. Ants treat certain leg injuries with life-saving amputations. When an ant injures its leg, it sometimes will turn to a buddy who will help out by gnawing the leg off, effectively performing life-saving limb amputation. That's according to some new experiments described in the journal Current Biology, which show that ants are the only other animal other than humans known to practice amputation as a medical treatment. Not only can they do this, but they are even able to diagnose the wounds and, depending on the location, adapt the treatment accordingly to maximize the survival chances of the injured, says Eric Frank, who studies social wound care among ants at the University of Würzburg in Germany. I find that truly remarkable. So do I, Mr. Frank. In the past, the group has studied how termite hunting ants in the tropics substantially reduce the death rate among injured nestmates by treating their wounds with antibiotic secretions that come from a spectral gland. But that gland doesn't exist in a common species known as Florida carpenter ants, or Campantus floridanus. This species nests in rotting wood and will fight rivals to defend its home. So Frank wanted to see how these ants would react when confronted with the kind of injuries that come with battle. His team quickly observed that these ants would cut off wounded legs, much like miniature Civil War era surgeons, and this really piqued my interest, he says. So yeah, I mean, you could definitely see this, especially if you're like a nature lover, as like, oh, this is pretty macabre. Like, it sounds like this guy's like fucking Mengele with ants. Maybe so, but definitely the shit he learned seems really cool, that they were able to say, hey, we can assess that, like, as ants, we can assess, like, hey, your leg's fucked up, bud. You need some help. And the ant is like, yeah, my shit's fucked up. Cut it off. And, like, they don't even really react. Like, they don't even flinch or, like, make dramatic movements or anything. They just kind of let it happen. And it's not, like, a super clean cut. Like, Frank says it takes, like, minutes to kind of make it happen, and they're gnawing at it. Also, when I was listening to this on the BBC, they kind of added, and he confirms it here, that they not just cut it, but they do use some kind of fluid, like the termites, and they apply it. And I was like, damn, that's just so crazy that, like, ants, and Frank goes on to add that, like, he doesn't think that they have, like, this kind of acumen, or they're doing, like, these grand assessments on the fly. Like, it kind of comes down to, like, just, like, evolution, and they've learned these traits, and they just kind of instinctually know what to do here. And this is kind of referencing another random study finding that I heard listening to the BBC about chimpanzees that were able to, they would take this leaf or this plant, and scientists knew that they didn't like this plant because they've studied these chimpanzees. They know that they don't enjoy eating it. So they rarely eat it. But they noticed that in this group of chimpanzees, they would, when there was an injury or there was a certain kind of sickness, they would go out and find this plant and then ingest it, or like try to apply it to wounds and things like that, because it had a certain property, and they instinctually kind of knew that and would try to replicate it. And I thought that was really cool. So I was like, okay, I missed that monkey story. I was monkeying around and not covering that. So I was like, let me cover this ant story. You know what I mean? Let me do that. Anyway, also random, as we segue into our next and last story, have you ever seen the movie Ants? And then also following up, have you ever seen the movie A Bug's Life? For me, it was definitely A Bug's Life was the main movie. That kind of takes mental precedent. Precedent, whatever. But Ants was also good. It almost had like a more of a raw, real feel, and like Bug's Life was a little lighter, but like the colors were better, the insects are better. I don't know. Chime in, in comments or whatever if you've seen that, how you feel about that, and how you feel about ants doing surgery. Shit, they doing surgery on a grape. Ants are doing surgery on each other. World's crazy. Anyway, we have one more thing I wanted to cover. We're gonna keep it animal related. But sadly, we got to talk about the humans that fuck shit up along the way. But yeah, let me go ahead and take the last break, and we'll go ahead and close this out. Ooh-wee. All right. Ooh. That was good. That was really good. All right. From the Columbus Dispatch. Former Columbus Zoo executive pleads guilty to 16 felonies. Sentencing set for September. That's Virgo month. Oh, boy. Oh. There's a burp. The second of three former top executives of the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium pleaded guilty Tuesday to an array of theft, conspiracy, and other charges for defrauding taxpayers and zoo coffers of millions of dollars. Peter Fingerhut, which I think is a very funny name. I don't know and I can't explain why, but it just makes me internally giggle when I say or think about it. But he faced 63 felony counts, including bribery, conspiracy, extortion, and money laundering, when he and others were indicted in September. Do you remember? I'm sorry. On Tuesday, he pleaded guilty to 16 felonies and one misdemeanor, leaving his sentencing on September 23rd to Delaware County Common Pleas Judge David Gormley. Fingerhut faces up to 37 and a half years in prison. He also agreed to pay $675,573 in restitution to the zoo, a small part of which will go to the IRS and Ohio Department of Taxation. Two current zoo employees sat in the front row of the gallery during Tuesday's plea hearing. "We want to see this crook go to jail," one of them said, declining to be named because they were unauthorized to discuss the matter. Fair. Fingerhut oversaw promotional tickets, tie-ins with the zoo, sponsors, and special events involving donors. His trial was scheduled for July 9th. Part of his plea might be connected to that of Greg Bell, the zoo's former chief financial officer, who agreed to cooperate with special prosecutors with the Ohio Attorney General's office. Bell pleaded guilty to 14 felony counts and faces up to 33 and a half years in prison at an August 19th sentencing hearing. Let's see here, but there's more. Some have described former CEO Thomas Stauff as the ringleader of the theft and fraud, if only because he held the zoo's top job, with others reporting directly to him. In court documents, prosecutors accused Stauff of using zoo money to buy a recreational vehicle for his exclusive use, taking it aboard a ferry in Putnam Bay on South Bass Island in Lake Erie for a family trip. His trial is set for August 6th. Let's see here. The indictment for the trio alleges that the upper management treated zoo cash, inventory of alcohol for special events, and other zoo assets as if they owned it. Stauff is accused of stealing bottles of alcohol and beer from the zoo warehouse for parties at his home several times a year over a 5 to 6 year period, according to the indictment. Bell's attorney, Sam Shemansky, said his client was the first to admit wrongdoing and place his fate in the hands of the court. Ooh, yeah, you were the first fucking weasel of the fucking pen. Congratulations. There's one more guy I wanted to talk about here before I let you go. It was Tracy Murnane, which is the most recent to face felony charges in the scandal. faces charges of grand theft, complicity in the commission of theft of a motor vehicle, forgery, telecommunications fraud, and filing incomplete, false, and fraudulent returns, according to Ohio Auditor Keith Faber's office. Prosecutors accuse Murnane of personally profiting by selling cars to the zoo using an anonymous seller, attending special events with zoo-owned tickets, and booking a party bus for his son's wedding using zoo resources. Murnane is scheduled for his arraignment change of plea hearing on July 8th. So this is unfortunate to cover this stuff, but good that these guys got fucking caught. I was curious because even though this is an Ohio story, I've actually never been to Columbus Zoo. So I talked to a friend real quick, and they said that zoo is amazing. It's a wonderful zoo, really great and interactive. So I'm happy to hear that the zoo, despite the fact that it was literally getting leached by people at the top, is still a success and it's still a good zoo. It still provides something to the community. That's good to hear. It would be a worse shame if the zoo was a bad city situation, and like maybe it could have been better if the resources actually would have been diverted to the right place. But regardless, it's still fucked up that these people decided like, hey, we're gonna just treat this shit like our piggy bank, like it's our own thing, because it's not. Like at the end of the day, this is at least supposed to be a goddamn company that's supposed to serve the public, and it's just a shame that these people were trying to exploit that. But yeah, good to see at least some justice here, at least somewhat. But yeah, obviously, boo these guys, send them to Tomato Town, aka my gulag space. But yeah, no, that's it. I think that's all I really have for today. Thank you for showing up and hanging out this long. I always love that. You're hearing my voice all the way to here. Shit, A to Z. That's crazy. With me? Anyway, if you'd like to help out, support the effort financially, become a newsie today. Patreon.com/Isaiah News. Free ways to hit me up, IsaiahNews1@gmail.com. Feel free to follow me or the podcast on any of the socials. Subscribe to the YouTube. That also helps out a lot. Leave a like, leave a comment. Sharing is caring. And hopefully I see you soon for some more good news. I love ya. Bye-bye. Mwah.